Welcome to the Organizational Maneuverability Radio Show, Defying Gravity so your team can soar at altitude, with host Marshall Goldsmith, Executive Coach Randy Swaim. The big thing on it, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, that when you look at the word perseverance, there's two parts of the word. There's per and there's severe. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the word per, P-E-R, stands for go through. And severance. When you look at the word perseverance, what it's really telling you is you have to go through the severe. And you know what? In our life journey, there are times when we've got to do that. And it's a challenging, and it's actually scary to a lot of people. And a lot of people just don't even want to do it. But very often, what you grow, what you become, what you know, all that kind of stuff, maybe the value to some of your family or whatever, happens sometimes when you do that. And so it's this aspect of the definition of perseverance, of persevere, go through the severe. That's what the word means. And that's what people have to do sometimes. And one of the things I'll just share with you, one thing that leaders have to be aware of, and I'll just kind of share this with you real quick, but the one thing that leaders have to be aware of, you know, leaders have a tendency to think that one of the severe things is when their people are just not playing their game or just whatever, you know, kind of thing. Unfortunately, that is not necessarily what we're talking about here. What you have to do is lead, coach, develop your people to be able to be successful in challenging situations and all of that sort of stuff. But doing it, because here's the thing, if in your management mindset, if your whole thing is to just point fingers at people and you dictate to them and say, well, you just shut up and do this, you know, and there are managers out there that sometimes have that sort of a mindset and everything. But here's the thing. If you do that, you are becoming the severe character that they have to persevere, and they have to go through and become something truly successful, even apart from the severe part that you're bringing. And so it's just from a leadership standpoint. And when you understand neuroscience and the processing of it, there is an aspect where that can come into play, and you got to be aware of that when you're a manager, but maybe not overly a great leader or whatever. You got to give some thought to that and understand how you're leading in such a way that you can encourage and feel oneness with your people, synergy and all that, and doing it in such a way where your team and you can create magical results, even in the midst of severe issues. It's something that a lot of people don't think about. You know what? That's a good point. One of the key aspects that true leadership does, you know, sometimes dictatorial managers don't, because they think my job is to tell them what to do, and I'm your boss. You got to do what I tell you to do, you know, and the kind of thing. And that's what a lot of people kind of think, and that's ridiculous and it's unprofessional. But as a leader, if you're having some communications with your people in such a way that they are feeling your oneness with them and your belief in them, and they can pass their belief into each other, guess what? You're building synergy in your team. And there are aspects about that when severe situations come on scene, they're not afraid anymore, and they can persevere well. And they can, and persevere isn't just threatening and, you know, throwing things at something or whatever, but it's understanding the situation, understanding what you're trying to accomplish truly, and how you're going to do that. And that's a key aspect. And that's also very aligned with organizational maneuverability. But the bottom line is that's something that you've got to be aware of that's different than a lot of people in today's world understand. The leader does it well where you have some of those really good conversations. You know, when you ask some questions of your team to help them get a sense of, you know what, my leader believes that I can come up with this. Wow. Wow. And you know what? They can work together and come up with, you know, potentially radical solutions with it. But the bottom line is, as a leader, if you're connecting with your team in such a way, now, if they're sitting there going, oh, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, then you can say, well, I'll tell you what, here's a couple of options. What do you think is the right benefit, you know, kind of thing, and mention it and let them kind of decide on the factors with each of those and see what's supposed to happen and all. But if you're kind of having conversations with your people where you're not just pointing fingers and threatening and dictating them, you know, kind of thing, but you're connecting with them, and there's a certain sense where they truly believe that because you're not just pointing fingers and dictating, you know, kind of thing. Now, if the team doesn't know, there are times when you can bring out a great answer that makes the team go, oh, you know, oh, well, I didn't think about that. Oh, yeah, you know what? And they go out and do it, and radical results happen. You know, all that is possible too. But the way that you do it as a manager is either good leadership or it's dysfunctional. And you have to be aware of which one you have to avoid and which one you have to truly bring. The difference is perseverance is just going through the severe. Adaptation might be that you just have to look at it and see what the result is here and going, yeah, you know what? Let's adjust, let's adapt, and let's do this, you know. And so, you know, it might be that, and but I will say this, that if you're talking about going through a severe situation, guess what? Sometimes you got to realize that you got to adapt a little bit on the factors that are there because the factors may have been factors that you didn't expect. And so you may have to adapt a little bit. But when you're talking about organizational maneuverability, you know, my concept and everything, that very often adaptiveness is required. Sometimes it's kind of small one bits, but sometimes it's bigger. And and being able to do that as a team so that the team in unity understands the real success and benefit. And yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's make this work. You know, kind of thing. And so that's the big difference. The perseverance is just going through severe and fighting and going to, you know, not necessarily fighting to prevent it, but you know, within yourself becoming strong and going through it and being aware of the severe things that are happening. But adaptability may be as you're going through there, as one thing comes on board that's, you know, you go, oh, you know what? If I turn right here a little bit, I don't have to worry about that. And I can still get there, you know, kind of thing. And that's just a little bit of a picture of the adapting part of it. What that there can be, because you remember, and you've heard, you know this. I know Justin has said it, and I've said it and stuff. But one of the things that the brain does, apart from just the you know the parasitic aspect in the frontal lobe and all of processing the information, one of the things that the brain does is it releases chemicals, you know, causing some challenging feelings in your body and stuff. You have to have some awareness on that to understand whether that is really a good decision to make in this situation. And if the chemical is is, not getting you where you need to be, you need to be aware of that, and you need to be aware of what you're going to do about it. And I'll tell you what, when you talk about combat people all over the military, guess what? These kind of things can work, because when you got a challenging situation happening, you have to be aware of what are you really doing, and is that a real success for what we need to accomplish, kind of thing. And this is not just military. This is challenging situations and everything. But the bottom line is that when you look at neuroscience and the frontal lobe processing, but also that middle little piece in your brain which releases chemicals. You know what? If it's releasing, it may be releasing a chemical that is not giving you the confidence that you need. And you got to be aware of what do I need to do? What do I need to process here to maybe change a little bit or whatever? And when you're in a challenging situation, that's just something that you need to kind of think about. Let me tell you, how I do it, and it's how I bring Marshall Goldsmith coaching and also the Sherpa coaching that I was with for a number of years and everything. How I bring the coaching perspective, what a lot of narcissistic, self-interested managers in today's world do is they just say, well, it's my job just to tell them what to do, and tell them why they need to do that and all that kind of stuff. With coaching and true leadership, that's not what you do. What I would do is I would get with them and I would ask some real serious questions about the situation they're in to help them develop their true awareness of the situational awareness that they're in. And what are you seeing there? And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll ask them, so what do you think is the real solution for that in this situation right now? And after they kind of come up with something, a lot of times I'll say, well, what is the strength of that? What's the success of that? But also, what do you have to be aware of on that? And what I do is I get their mental processing to really gaining a sense on that. Because guess what? When you go into a situation, particularly if it's severe, if you go into a situation, those factors can change a little bit. And you have to be aware of what you think there may change and what we're going to do about it as a team. And you know what? When you see that, you change it a little bit, and guess what? Amazing things can happen. And so that's just something to think about with that. And I'll tell you this, that with my background in pilot flying jets and everything, guess what? All of this is relevant to that, because guess what? When you're flying, particularly a military jet or even a civilian jet, guess what? On this flight, there can be things that you didn't expect. And what are you going to do? If all you're doing, and what a lot of people in our world today are doing, is they totally focus back on just what they think they're supposed to do. That's not real leadership, and it's not real processing in neuroscience. What you have to do is understand what your right decisions are and the right strategic choices to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And that's a little bit different than most people realize.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.